Hello everybody, welcome back to the Chronological Bible Study. We're in week 10. This is the video for March 4th through March 10th, or day 63 to day 69. Last week we left off with the rebellion of the people against Moses and Aaron, Joshua and Caleb, after they went in to the land of Canaan and they scattered out and they decided there's walled cities there and giants and we don't want to invade. We don't want to do what God has prepared us to do. We're not willing to do that. After that, they were punished. They spent 40 days in the land of Canaan scouting, and because they spent 40 days in the land of Canaan scouting, they now have to wander in the desert for 40 years. We saw right after that that they decided, oh, you know what, we changed our mind, we're going to invade anyway. And when they did, they didn't do it with God's will. They invaded anyway, and they got their butts kicked and they had to retreat. So that's where we left off last week. This week we're walking right into another rebellion, an internal rebellion. But before we get to that, we're going to go over where we're at in our timeline. We're just over a year since the Exodus of Egypt. Now we've gone through Exodus. They went to the mountain of Sinai. They received the law, which was the book of Leviticus. Then we proceeded forward in time through book of Numbers. And after we finish up the book of Numbers, we're going to read the book of Deuteronomy next week. The book of Deuteronomy is going to be Moses summing up everything that's happened from like Exodus 9 through Numbers and Leviticus. Just to review, these are our horizontal books. These are the books that move time forward. These are our vertical books, which interject into the time period of these books. For example, Ruth happens during the time of Judges. So Judges is the horizontal book moving time forward. During that time period, Ruth takes place. And we have the same thing here. Leviticus and Deuteronomy are our vertical books, and Exodus and Numbers are our horizontal books. We're about to finish up Numbers, and then Deuteronomy will interject at the end of that. The book of Deuteronomy will be complete with the Exodus era, and then Joshua will take us into the land of Canaan during the conquest era. God has already done everything that they need to invade the land of Canaan. He's given them all the tools. He's prepared them perfectly for the conquest. He's given them the law. He's building them into a fighting force. They have their marching formations, the way to set up a defensive camp, as we saw last week. They've had to learn how to depend on God and not on their own will, on their own understanding, on their own capabilities. They've learned through having to rely on the manna and the water from the rocks. They've had to learn to depend solely on God, which is that's the lesson that they're going to need when they invade the land of Canaan, because when they get there, God's going to fight those battles for them. We do know that they left Egypt as an army. They left with weapons because soon after they leave Egypt, they get in a battle with the Amalekites, and Joshua leads them into battle and they defeat the Amalekites. That's even before they get to Sinai. So we know that they left Egypt with weapons, and now in the last year, while they're camped at Sinai, they've honed all of these different capabilities that God has given them, and God has prepared them and built them into this fighting force that's going to be capable of moving into the land of Canaan. But as we said last week, God can prepare you for all kinds of things in life. He can bring you through trials, through good things and bad things, if you're seeking His will, shape you and mold you into the person that you need to be to accomplish whatever the purpose that He's given to you. Now, where we go wrong is when we see the task ahead of us and we doubt God and we don't have the faith to accomplish whatever that task is ahead of us. So when we lack that faith, just like the Israelites now have lacked the faith to invade, now they have to wander in the desert for 40 years until that generation is past and the second generation has come. This is a generation that is raised on manna. They're raised on quail. They're raised on whatever they can find. They fought several battles. These are people that were nomadic, and they're desperately wanting a home. By the time the second generation gets into the land of Canaan and Joshua leads them in, they're hungry for it. They're no longer saying, send us back to Egypt where all of our needs were taken care of. They're saying, no, we're ready to take this land as our own, as was promised to our forefathers. That's where we're at. But before we get to the conquest, where we're going to get when we get to Joshua, we're finishing up the book of Numbers, and then next week we'll go through Deuteronomy. The purpose for the Israelites is to occupy that land of Canaan, that narrow strip of land between the Mediterranean Sea and the desert on the east side of the Jordan River. And they're supposed to occupy that narrow strip of land and become a kingdom or a nation of priests. As you know in previous videos, that strip of land is a thoroughfare. So if you want to go to Egypt and you're in modern day Turkey, you have to go through Israel to get to Egypt. Say you're in Persia and you want to go to North Africa, you've got to go up over the Fertile Crescent, down through Israel, and then over the top of North Africa, over to Carthage. The reason why that's important is God is putting them there as a nation of priests so that everyone that passes through that region will have an opportunity to become worshipers of Yahweh. This isn't an exclusive thing just for the Israelites. The Israelites are supposed to be representatives of Yahweh so that when other people come through, they have an opportunity to know Yahweh the same way that they do. They have an opportunity to become followers of Yahweh the same way that the Israelites do. And this is a common thing during this time. It's a common misconception to think that the Old Testament is just about the Israelites. But that is not the case. The whole function of the Israelites is that they're supposed to serve as this nation of priests so that other people who aren't Israelites, the Gentiles, like me, can become worshipers of Yahweh. They can know Him. So God strategically prepared them to take that land so that they can set up that, and that is their purpose, to serve God, is to stay in that place and serve as representatives of Yahweh as people pass through that territory. So far, God's already gone with them, and He dwells with them in a tabernacle. He leads them in a pillar of cloud or fire. He tells them when to go. He tells them when to stop. They've seen all kinds of miracles. They've had tribal governments set up. They have the theocracy set up, the priestly government who enforce the law that was given to them. They're given everything to function efficiently as a people set apart in a world full of idolatry, perversion, child sacrifice, rebellion against God in general, which they get through their flesh. We all get through our flesh. We all have that problem. Our rebellion against God, the proclivity that we have that makes us want to do things that we know are not right. It's in our flesh, and it's been there since Adam and Eve disobeyed in the Garden of Eden, and it's been bred down to us in every generation, even to modern day. And that's why we have the issues that we have. The only way out of that is through some kind of atonement, and it's the atonement through the grace that God provides to you through faith. And it's the same way for the Israelites. When they make their sacrifice, on the altar, they have the faith to know that their sins are going to be forgiven. Otherwise, they're just burning animals on a fire. But because they have faith in God, that God is going to forgive them, that this sacrifice is going to atone for their shortcomings, because of the faith they have, they are forgiven. They are atoned for. And it's this continuous cycle they have to go back and do every year. They have to go back and make atonement for their sins. Thank goodness we don't have to do that anymore. Jesus Christ came as the last atoning sacrifice that was required for all of humanity. All we have to do is accept the free gift that God has given us. So now's a good time to talk about two different kinds of revelation. The first type we're going to talk about is general revelation. And general revelation is God showing Himself to all humanity. So examples are the stars, the galaxies, the solar system. You look up, you see a complex system of stars and gravitational movements, the right rotation around the sun and all those things. And it just so happens that we are on the third planet from the sun, and just so happens that this planet is just the right distance from the sun. It's not too hot, it's not too cold. We have the right chemical compositions on this planet to actually sustain life, and that's no mistake. The earth was designed, and we were designed in the earth, as part of the earth actually, to be exactly where we're at. And when a person looks at that and they see that, that is evidence of God. So before the Enlightenment period of the, let's say, 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, before the Enlightenment period, it didn't matter what culture you were in. It didn't matter if you were a Viking or if you were an Indian in India. It didn't matter if you were a Native American. It didn't matter if you were in China. There was a God that you believed in. So this anti-God thing is a fairly new thing, that we don't believe in a God. So when these people who believed in God looked up and saw these signs that were clearly signs of a creator, even if it wasn't Yahweh that they were worshiping because of those things, God was revealing himself to all humanity. Another example is the conscience that we all have. Doesn't matter what society you're raised in, when you're a child and you see your brother or sister get hurt, you have some kind of moral conflict with that. You don't want to see them get hurt. You don't want to see them injured. Also, you know, as adults, we have a deep down instinct to take care of children, to look at children and try to take care of them, because we know that they are living in that innocent state where they can be taken advantage of. So as older people, we look to children and we have an instinct to take care of them, and it's a morality issue within ourselves. And it's that conscience that God reveals himself to us. That is an example of general revelation. Things that people regularly say, there must be a God if this exists. Or if this situation can happen, there must be a God. Those are those examples of general revelation. And people are discovering, really, with general revelation, they're just discovering what God has already known all along. What he designed himself. That's been there all along, that we're discovering as time goes by. And because of that, Paul says in Romans 1:20, this is the verse in New King James, he says, "For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made," being understood by us, we are made, and being understood by the animals who are made, "even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse." So that means because we have general revelation, because we all have that conscience, because we all have seen the signs of God, and we've all at one point in our life said, there must be a God if this exists. If this situation happens, there must be a God. So because we all have faced that situation, we've all seen general revelation, and therefore we are all without excuse. Okay, so that's general revelation. Deep down, all people know there is a God. They will likely deny that publicly if they are in rebellion against God, but eventually everyone talks to God, like the song says. And it is when we have come to the end of our own self-sufficiency that we can see him more clearly. And we can see not only that we see him, but we can see that we need him and that we depend on him. But some people, if you live in a comfortable state and you live in a state where all your needs are met, you may not ever get to the end of yourself, the end of your self-sufficiency, to the point where you admit that I'm not strong enough, I am not wise enough, I cannot endure enough, there's nothing that I can do to save myself, I need God. And it's at that point where you have an opportunity to reach out and grab hold of the free gift that is already provided to you through Jesus Christ. That's general revelation. And then there's special revelation. This is the second type of revelation, is special revelation. And this is when God reveals himself to one individual or a specific group of people, usually to accomplish a certain purpose. So examples of that. God revealed himself to Noah, and he tells him to build an ark. Okay, and the purpose was for building the ark was so that the humanity could survive the flood, and that the earth would be wiped clean of the evil that existed there in humanity, and everything could begin again, a second beginning. Now, Noah did still have the sin nature in his flesh that was passed down from Adam, that we still have today. So that was carried forward. But as far as the society that existed on earth, it was wiped off. And then everything began again with Noah, his wife, and his 3 sons and their wives. Another example, Moses. Moses was a sheep herder. He was about 80 years old. He was a sheep herder in Midian. And he goes over to Sinai and he sees a burning bush, and he starts talking to God there, okay? And God revealed himself in that special revelation for what purpose? So that Moses would go back to Egypt, where he's from, and take his people, take the Israelites out of Egypt. Another example is the law, what we've been reading in the Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. That's an example of special revelation that's given to the Israelites for them to accomplish that specific purpose. The purpose of being the nation of priests in that narrow strip of land called the land of Canaan. Also, the earthly life of Jesus. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us, John 1:14. And during that time, Jesus taught much, and we learned much, and that was an opportunity for special revelation. Just so happens that the followers of Jesus wrote down the words of Jesus in a book called the Bible, which is another example of special revelation to us. So we are held even more accountable than those people who only have general revelation. Luke 12:48 says, "To whom much is given, much is required." So at this point, if we focus back on Israel, Israel has been given freedom. They've been given riches. They've gone from slaves to an army of 600,000. They've heard God speak from a mountain. They are definitely without excuse because all this special revelation that they have received. Not only the general revelation, Paul says that we're without excuse with general revelation, but also all this special revelation that they have, they are without excuse. Because they lack the faith, now they have to wander the desert for 40 years. Only 2 of the people from that generation will actually enter the land of Canaan, Joshua and Caleb. Moses won't, Aaron won't, Miriam won't. None of the whole first generation that left Egypt will enter the land. That's going to be around 39 years later. So that's where we pick up between 1445 and 1279 BC, just over a year from when they left Egypt. They weren't ready, and their faith was not strong enough. So we know that Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, they all are from the tribe of Levi. And then last week we talked about the 3 clans that come from the tribe of Levi. Remember, the tribe of Levi is much smaller. There's 3 clans in there: the Merarites, the Gershonites, and the Kohathites. And Moses and Aaron and Miriam are from the clan of Kohath. And if you remember back to last week, the clan of Kohath were the ones that were supposed to take care of and transport the items that go in the tabernacle. The lampstand, the table of presence? The table of presence, the incense altar, the Ark of the Covenant. So they have the most important job out of all the other clans of Levites. One clan has to carry the poles and the ropes, and another clan has to carry the actual skins that make up the tent, and they have wagons to do so. But the Kohathites have to carry all these items. They can't use a wagon. They have the burden of carrying things, but it's also a privilege because they're the only ones that get to interact with those objects and get to interact inside the tabernacle. We have another person that comes from the clan of Kohath. His name is Korah. Once again, there's a rebellion, and Korah conspires against them. So we're going to pick up there in number 16. It says, "One day Korah, son of Issachar, descendant of Kohath, son of Levi, conspired with Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the son of Peleth, from the tribe of Reuben. They incited a rebellion against Moses along with 250 other leaders of the community, all prominent members of the assembly. They united against Moses and Aaron and said, "You have gone too far." This is because Moses is telling them, no, we're not going to invade right now. You guys ruined it. We're not going to invade because of this last rebellion you had. Now we're going to wander the desert, and not one of you is going to enter into the promised land. So this is why they're in such an uproar about it. They said, "You've gone too far." The whole community of Israel has been set apart by the Lord, which is true. And He is with all of us. What right do you have to act as though you are greater than the rest of the Lord's people? So this is more than a rebellion. This is a coup. This is a coup against Moses and Aaron and the people that follow Moses and Aaron's direction, which are Caleb and Joshua primarily. Moses says, "Tomorrow morning the Lord will show us who belongs to Him and who is holy. The Lord will allow only those whom He selects to enter His own presence. Korah, you and all your followers must prepare your incense burners. Light fires in them tomorrow and burn incense before the Lord. Then we will see who the Lord chooses as His Holy One. You Levites are the ones who have gone too far." He's saying, you're the ones that are out of line, not us. We're just obeying God, and you're in rebellion. You're the one that's gone too far. Verse 8, "Then Moses spoke again to Korah, 'Now listen, you Levites. Does it seem insignificant to you that the God of Israel has chosen you from among all the community of Israel to be near Him, so you can serve in the Lord's tabernacle and stand before the people to minister to them? Korah, He has already given this special ministry to you and your fellow Levites. Are you now demanding the priesthood as well?'" So Korah just doesn't like the fact that he has to listen to Moses and Aaron, and he's using this as an opportunity to overthrow them. "Then Moses summoned Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, but they replied, 'We refuse to come before you. Isn't it enough that you brought us out of Egypt, a land flowing with milk and honey, to kill us here in the wilderness, that you now treat us like your subjects?'" Remember, this is the first generation that came out of Egypt. They have this whole idea that Egypt was so much better, slavery was so much better than them wandering in the desert. The flesh is having a conflict with this submission to God, as many people now today have a problem with that. Submission to God. We want to do our own thing. We want to do things by our own thoughts and by our own understanding rather than just simply obeying God. Believe me, things are a lot better if you just obey. If you just do what He tells you to do, your life is so much better. It's not always going to be hunky-dory, but your life is a lot more fulfilled and a lot more peaceful. Verse 14, "What's more, you haven't brought us into another land flowing with milk and honey. You haven't given us a new homeland with fields and vineyards. Are you trying to fool these men? We will not come." They were the ones that refused to go in the first place. And now they're trying to turn it. Sound like some politicians here. They're trying to turn it over on to make it Moses and Aaron's fault, a reason why they didn't go into the promised land. And Moses said to Korah, "You and all your followers must come here tomorrow and present yourselves before the Lord. Aaron will also be here. You and each of your 250 followers must prepare an incense burner and put incense on it, so you can all present them before the Lord. Aaron will also bring his incense burner." So each of these men prepared an incense burner, lit the fire, and placed incense on it. Then they all stood at the entrance of the tabernacle with Moses and Aaron. Meanwhile, Korah had stirred up the entire community against Moses and Aaron, and they all gathered at the tabernacle entrance. So they're all there watching this. The whole nation of Israel is standing at the entrance of the tabernacle thereabout and watching what's happening. Then the glorious presence of the Lord appeared to the whole community, above the tabernacle. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Get away from all these people so that I may instantly destroy them." The Lord tells Moses and Aaron, "Get away from them because I'm about to destroy them." Then Moses and Aaron fell face down on the ground. "O God," they pleaded, "you are the God who gives breath to all creatures. Must you be angry with all the people when only one man sins?" See, they know this is all coming from Korah. This ain't their first rodeo. They know this is all coming from Korah and his rebellion and his jealousy. He's letting his flesh rule him. And the Lord said to Moses, "Then tell all the people to get away from the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram." So Moses got up, rushed over to the tents of Dathan and Abiram, followed by the elders of Israel. He said, "Quick!" he told the people, "Get away from the tents of these wicked men and don't touch anything that belongs to them. If you do, you'll be destroyed for their sins." Moses knows what's about to go down. All the people stood back from the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Then Dathan and Abiram came out and stood at the entrance of their tents, together with their wives and the children and the little ones. And Moses said, "This is how you will know that the Lord has sent me to do all the things that I have done. For I have not done them on my own. If these men die a natural death, or if nothing unusual happens, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord does something entirely new, and the ground opens its mouth and swallows them and all their belongings, and they go down alive into the grave, then you will know that these men have shown contempt for the Lord." So right now, he's showing the people that he is God's chosen leader. Once again, if getting water out of a rock wasn't good enough, now he's showing them again. Because they're so easily turned. They're so easily turned against him in rebellion. Verse 31. He had hardly finished speaking the words when the ground suddenly split open beneath them. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed the men along with their households and all their followers who were standing with them and everything they owned. So they went down alive into the grave along with all their belongings, and the earth closed over them. So not only did the earth split and they fell in, but it closed back. That's what's truly miraculous about this. That's what can't be explained away. Then fire blazed forth from the Lord. So remember, the Lord's presence is up above the tabernacle, and the fire blazed forth from his presence and burned up the 250 men who were offering incense. And the Lord said to Moses, "Tell Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, to pull all the incense burners from the fire, for they are holy. Also tell them to scatter the burning coals. Take the incense burners of these men who have sinned, and at the cost of their lives, and hammer the metal into a thin sheet to overlay the altar." So he took the metal that was from all these incense burners and then covered the altar in this metal. Then God gives them another sign so that there's no doubt in their mind. Number 17. Tell the people of Israel to bring you 12 wooden staffs, one from each leader of the Israel's ancestral tribes, and inscribe each leader's name on his staff. Inscribe Aaron's staff on the staff of the tribe of Levi, for there must be one staff for the leader of each ancestral tribe. Place these staffs in the tabernacle in front of the ark containing the tablets of the covenant. So these staffs are going to go inside the most holy place in front of the ark of the covenant inside the tabernacle. And he says, "Put them in there where I meet you. Buds will sprout on the staff belonging to the man I choose. Then I will finally put an end to the people's murmuring and complaining against you." So Moses gave the instructions to the people of Israel, and each of the 12 tribal leaders placed the staffs in the Lord's presence in the tabernacle of the covenant. When he went into the tabernacle of the covenant the next day, he found that Aaron's staff, representing the tribe of Levi, had sprouted, budded, blossomed, and produced ripe almonds. When Moses brought all the staffs out from the Lord's presence, he showed them to the people, and each man claimed his own staff. The Lord said to Moses, "Place Aaron's staff permanently before the Ark of the Covenant to serve as a warning to rebels. This should put an end to their complaints against me and prevent any further deaths." Now the Israelites really understand the brevity of a rebellion. You must obey God's commandments. So since Aaron's staff budded in Numbers 17, we pick up in Numbers 20. Between Numbers 17 and Numbers 20, 39 years have passed. So they've been now in the desert, wandering around in Sinai there for 40 years. Numbers 20 is a very interesting chapter. It says, "In the first month of the year, the whole community of Israel arrived in the wilderness of Sin and camped at Kadesh. While they were there, Miriam died and was buried." Now, the Bible doesn't mention anything about any other brothers and sisters that Moses and Aaron have. We only know that his mother and father, who are named later on, only have, from what we know, they only have Moses and Aaron and Miriam. We also know that Miriam, most likely, is the sister who was watching over Moses as he was floating down the river in the basket, as he was taken out of the water by Pharaoh's daughter. Miriam was likely the one that said to Pharaoh's daughter, do you want me to go find the baby's mother to nurse this child for you? Now, matriarchal type of Israel now is finally passing away. And she does there at Kadesh. Also there at Kadesh, where she was buried, there was no water for the people to drink again. So they rebelled against Moses and Aaron. They started complaining again. The people blamed Moses and said, if only we had died in the Lord's presence with our brothers. So only if we had died in the Lord's presence when Korah and the rest of them died. Why have you brought the congregation of the Lord's people into the wilderness to die along with all their livestock? Because God told him to. Why did you make us leave Egypt and bring us here to this terrible place? Because God told him to. This land has no grain, no figs, no grapes, no pomegranates, and no water to drink. Moses and Aaron turned away from the people and went to the entrance of the tabernacle. There they fell face down on the ground. Then the glorious presence of the Lord appeared to them. And the Lord said to Moses, you and Aaron must take the staff. This is the staff that budded, right? In the last ordeal we had, that budded, it's in front of the Ark of the Covenant, inside the Holy of Holies, inside the tabernacle. Take the staff and assemble the entire community. As the people watch, speak to the rock over there, and it will pour out its water. You will provide enough water from the rock to satisfy the whole community and their livestock. Now let's review. Let's go back to Exodus 17. Remember back in Exodus 17, they also got water from a rock. The whole community of Israel left the wilderness of sin and moved from place to place. Eventually they camped at Rephidim, where there was no water there for the people to drink. So once more the people complained against Moses. Give us water to drink, they demanded. Quiet, Moses replied. Why are you complaining against me? And why are you testing the Lord? Way back then, he was telling them the same thing he's telling them now. But tormented by thirst, they continued to argue with Moses. Why did you bring us out of Egypt? Are you trying to kill us, our children, and our livestock with thirst? Then Moses cried out to the Lord, what should I do with these people? They are ready to stone me. The Lord said to Moses, walk out in front of the people, take your staff, the one you used when you struck the water of the Nile, and call some of the elders of Israel to join you. I will stand before you on the rock at Mount Sinai, strike the rock, and water will come gushing out. Then the people will be able to drink. So that was Exodus 17. That's before they got to Sinai. That's before they fought the Amalekites. That's way back, right after they came out of Egypt. So they've been here before, where God tells them to do something with a rock, to get water out of the rock. But the difference is, in Exodus 17, God told Moses to strike the rock with the staff. Here he tells him to speak to the rock, and it will pour out its water. So that's key to what's about to happen. In verse 9, so Moses did as he was told. He took the staff from the place where it was kept before the Lord. Then he and Aaron summoned the people to come and gather at the rock. Listen, you rebels, he shouted. Must we bring you water from this rock? Then Moses raised his hand and struck the rock twice with the staff, and water gushed out. What was Moses told to do? Moses was told to speak. He was supposed to have the staff and speak to the rock. So what was going on? God was going to double down on the last time they saw him do this. He wasn't only going to strike the rock. He was going to leave no doubt in these people's mind that God has got them. All Moses is going to do is speak now to the rock, and the rock is going to produce water. But Moses, in his own thinking here, makes a huge mistake. He's obviously aggravated with the people by this time. He struck the rock once last time the water came out of it. I'm going to hit this rock twice instead of just once like I did last time. I'm going to hit it twice. Well, what's that doing is showing the people that he's hitting the rock the same way he did it last time, but now he's hitting it twice. Whereas what God was trying to show him, that he's doing even less and God is doing more. That's what God's trying to show the people of Israel, that this isn't Moses doing this is God doing this, is what God's intention is. But what Moses does is he doubles down on the human side and he strikes it twice rather than just speaking the way he was told. Water still came out, even though he didn't do it exactly the way that God told him. the rock still produced water. So the entire community and their livestock drank their fill. Verse 12. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust me enough to demonstrate my holiness to the people of Israel, you will not lead them into the land I am giving them. Because of their trust. See how that plays into Moses striking the rock twice. He doubted just a hair, and that was enough to cause this. And because of that, Moses and Aaron are not going to actually enter the land of Canaan. The whole community of Israel, they left Kadesh and arrived at Mount Hor, H-O-R. Then on the border of the land of Edom, the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, the time has come for Aaron to join his ancestors in death. He will not enter the land I am giving the people of Israel, because the two of you rebelled against my instructions concerning the water at Meribah. Now take Aaron and his son Eleazar on to Mount Hor. There you will remove Aaron's priestly garments, put them on Eleazar his son, and Aaron will die there and join his ancestors. So Moses did as the Lord commanded. Now this is his brother and his nephew. The three of them went on Mount Hor together as the whole community watched. At the summit, Moses removed the priestly garments from Aaron and put them on Eleazar, Aaron's son. Then Aaron died there on top of the mountain, and Moses and Eleazar went back down. When the people realized that Aaron had died, all Israel mourned for him 30 days. So now we've lost Miriam, we've lost Aaron. They have a battle here with the Canaanites, and then they have a plague that comes on them of snakes. This is Numbers chapter 21. People of Israel set out from Mount Hor, taking the road to the Red Sea, to go around the land of Edom, because the king of Edom wouldn't let them pass through their land. The people grew impatient with the long journey, and they began to speak against God and Moses. Why have you brought us out of Egypt to die here in the wilderness? They complained. There's nothing to eat here and nothing to drink, and we hate this horrible manna. So the Lord sent poisonous snakes among the people, and many were bitten and died. Then the people came to Moses and cried out, we have sinned by speaking against the Lord and against you. Pray that the Lord will take away the snakes. So Moses prayed for the people. Then the Lord told him, make a replica of a poisonous snake and attach it to a pole. All who are bitten will live if they simply look at it. So Moses made a snake out of bronze and attached it to a pole. Then anyone who was bitten by a snake could look at the bronze snake and be healed. So this is key, because later on the Israelites make an idol out of this bronze snake. And then further along after that, Jesus references it, and he says, as Moses lifted up the bronze serpent in the desert, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. And that's a reference to how Jesus will be lifted up on the cross. So they go through Moab, and they have several battles there. So far, they fought the Amalekites when they first came out of Egypt. A year later, they fought the Amalekites and the Canaanites in Numbers 14. They fought the Canaanites, King Aaron, in Numbers 21. Then they went into Moab, where they encountered the Moabites and the Ammonites. Now, if you remember, way back in Genesis 19, when Lot and his family left Sodom, his wife looked back and she was turned into a pillar of salt. Well, eventually Lot and his daughters end up in a cave. And in there, because they were raised in Sodom, and that was probably a common thing in Sodom, they get their father drunk and they sleep with him. And then out of those two unions comes two sons named Moab and Ammon. These are the descendants of those boys that were born from Lot and his daughters, that now the Israelites are having to conquer. Back in Genesis 15:16, these are those same Amorites there that God was speaking about. And he said the sins of the Amorites do not warrant their destruction yet. Well, obviously, these Amorites that they're fighting now, they're bad enough to warrant their destruction. So now the time is right. They've also fought King Sihon and the Amorites in Numbers 21. They fought King Jaser and the Amorites. They fought King Og at Bashan and Edrei. And the Midianites also. With only 12,000 men, they defeat 5 Midianite kingdoms. So they've gone through a lot of battles by the time they actually get there, beside the river Jordan on the plains of Moab. Numbers 22 kind of goes into this sideshow about Balaam. It's kind of a sidebar, right? And then we get this whole interaction between Balaam and Balak. And Balak is the son of Zippor, he's a Moabite king, and he had seen everything the Israelites did to the Amorites already. And when the people of Moab saw how the Israelites they were terrified. The king of Moab said to the elders of Midian, "This mob will devour everything in sight, like an ox devours grass in the field." Remember, just the fighting people, just the fighting men of the army is 600,000 strong. So if each of those guys have a wife, now we're up to 1.2 million. We're talking about like 2 million people probably. So he hires this prophet, Balaam. Balaam does represent a prophet who can receive messages from God, but he doesn't exactly do good stuff with it, hence why he's brought there to curse the people of Israel. Balak wants Balaam to curse them, and he takes them to 3 different locations, and Balaam ends up only blessing them 3 times. And then he finally gives a prophecy saying that the Israelites are going to rule everything in that area. And that's not exactly what King Balak wanted to hear. Balaam was riding a donkey in, and then the angel stands in his way, and the donkey does everything he can to protect Balaam. He tries running off the road, he tries squishing his leg up against the wall, he tries stopping like a donkey does and not going any further. And Balaam keeps whipping this donkey, trying to get him to go. And finally, the Lord allows this donkey to speak to him and says, "Hey, haven't I always been a good donkey to you? What are you whipping me for? There must be some reason there." And then Balaam is allowed to see the angel of the Lord up there blocking the road in the way. And it was just an effort to slow him down for whatever reason, for the Israelites to get in a better position, or whatever the reason was behind that. But Balaam ends up blessing them instead of cursing them, as the king wanted. The whole point of the book of Numbers being called the book of Numbers. The book of Numbers is called Numbers because within the book of Numbers there are 2 census that are taken. There's one that's taken at Sinai, which is where we got all our numbers from last week's video, the 603,550 fighting men. And then they take another one there before they cross over into Jordan. Numbers 26. The Lord said to Moses and Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, "From the whole community of Israel, record the names of all the warriors by their families. List all the men 20 years old or older who are able to go to war." So they're on the plains of Moab, beside the Jordan River, across from Jericho. So they're positioned, they're ready to invade, but now they have some finishing things that they've got to get right before they cross the river. Numbers 1 census, that's generation 1. That's the generation that came out of Egypt. Our Numbers 26 census, this is generation 2. This is the children of those people who came out of Egypt. So these are the people that were brought up in the desert. They're hardened. They've been living on manna and quail and water from rocks. They've been conditioned for what they're about to go do. And imagine they're very zealous too. They've been following the pillar of fire. They've been following the pillar of cloud. They've been observing Moses and Aaron's sons interact with God. They've been honoring these sacrifices. They've been following God's laws. So they take another census, and we find out that the tribe of Reuben has decreased 2,770. The tribe of Simeon, now you remember way back when Simeon and Levi, they go in to take retribution against the Shechemites for the rape of their sister Dinah. He tells them, because you've done this, when you finally get to the land, you're not going to receive any. You're not going to get any land. And I've hit on this a few times as we've gone through. Simeon has gone in generation 1 from 59,300 to generation 2, 22,200. They've had a reduction of 37,100 people. So they've lost, in one generation, they've lost 37,000 people. Gad also, the tribe of Gad, they've lost 5,150 people. Judah has increased. Issachar has increased significantly. Zeb has increased. Manasseh has increased by 20,500. Ephraim has decreased. Benjamin has increased 10,000. And Dan has increased. Asher has increased. And Naphtali has decreased. Generation 1, there were 603,550 fighting men. Generation 2, there's 601,730 fighting men. So you can see that they've been honed, they've been shaped, they've been prepared for what they're about to do. And then the reason why I brought up Simeon and Levi, way back when, Simeon tribe has been reduced significantly, which takes us there to chapter 26, verse 52. The Lord said to Moses, "Divide the land among the tribes, and distribute the grants of land in proportion to the tribes' populations, as indicated by the number of names on the list. Give the larger tribes more land and the smaller tribes less land, each group receiving a grant in proportion to the size of its population. But you must assign the land by lot, and give land to each ancestral tribe according to the number of names on the list. Each grant of land must be assigned by lot among the larger and smaller tribal groups." Jacob told him way back when, because you've done this, you're only going to receive a little bit of land. And now that's coming to fruition, because Levi is not going to receive any land at all. That's the tribe of priests. That's the priestly tribe. They're not going to receive any land. They're going to live in each of the tribal lands, right? Each of the lands. And Simeon now, their population is reduced by 37,000. They're only going to get a little teeny tiny piece of land. And it's going to actually be within the land of Judah. And then in Numbers 26, verse 59, we're finally given the names of the parents of Aaron, Moses, and Miriam. They were Amram and Jochebed. Verse 64 is important because it says, "Not one person on the list that had been taken from those listed in the previous registration taken by Moses and Aaron in the wilderness of Sinai, for the Lord had said to them, they will all die in the wilderness. Not one of them survived except Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, son of Nun." So out of that generation now, you've only got Caleb, Joshua, and Moses left. Numbers 27, we have an instance where land is granted to the daughters of a man because there are no sons. He has no sons, so he only has daughters. So the Lord gives them rules about how this land is supposed to be passed down. If a man dies and has no son, then give his inheritance to his daughters. If he has no daughter either, transfer his inheritance to his brothers. If he has no brothers, give his inheritance to his father's brothers, which is his uncles. But if his father has no brothers, give his inheritance to the nearest relative in his clan. This is a legal requirement for the people of Israel, just as the Lord commanded Moses. Then Joshua is chosen to lead Israel. Chapter 27, verse 12. "One day the Lord said to Moses, climb one of the mountains east of the river. Look out over the land I have given the people of Israel. After you have seen it, you will die like your brother Aaron." Now remember, Aaron and Moses and Eleazar went up on the mountain. And while they were up there, Aaron died. And then Moses and Eleazar came back down. He says, you're going to die in the same manner. He says, verse 14, "For you both, Moses and Aaron, rebelled against my instruction in the wilderness of sin. When the people of Israel rebelled, you failed to demonstrate my holiness to them at the waters." Remember, he struck the rock twice instead of speaking to it like he was told. "Then Moses said to the Lord, O Lord, you are the God who gives breath to all creatures. Please appoint a new man as leader for the community. Give them someone who will guide them wherever they go and lead them into battle, so the community of the Lord will not be like sheep without a shepherd." The Lord replied, "Take Joshua, son of Nun, who has the Spirit in him, and lay your hands on him. Present him to Eleazar the priest before the whole community and publicly commission him to lead the people. He shall transfer some of your authority to him, so the whole community of Israel will obey him. When direction from the Lord is needed, Joshua will stand before Eleazar the priest, who will use the Urim," which is one of the little things he kept in his ephod up here. He had the Urim and the Thummim. He'll use that Urim to decide. Some of the tribes want to stay on the east side of the river rather than crossing over the river Jordan into the land of Canaan. They want to stay on the east side. And it's in Numbers 32. The tribes of Reuben and Gad owned vast numbers of livestock. So when they saw that the land of Jazer and Gilead were ideally suited for their flocks and herds, they came to Moses, Eleazar the priest, and the other leaders of the community. And they said, "Notice the towns. The Lord has conquered this whole area for the community of Israel, and is ideally suited for all our livestock. If we have found favor with you, please let us have this land as our property instead of giving us land across the Jordan River." So there's this conflict now, because now Moses is like, are you going to bother coming across and helping us conquer the land we're supposed to actually conquer? Or are you guys just trying to wuss out and stay over on the east side of the river? And they say, no, we're going to go over, we're going to cross the river with you. We're going to help you conquer the land. And when we're done conquering the land, we're going to come back to this land that we just conquered, that's on the east side of the river, and where our women and our livestock already are, because the grazing land is really good there. So they agree to that. God permits that. And then Moses, there in chapter 33, goes back over their entire history. Moses now, remember, he's gone up on the mountain. Moses now is trying to prepare the people that have been following him since he was 80 years old. He's now 120 years old. He is preparing them to go forth without him. So they're going to have Joshua. They're going to have Joshua as a leader, but he's going to give them as many tools as he can and teach this second generation. He's going to try to fill in any hole that he possibly left over the last 40 years to teach them and prepare them for what they're about to go do when they take over the land of Canaan. There in chapter 33, he goes through their entire travel from the time they left Egypt all the way up to the time where they're at right now beside the Jordan River. And he highlights certain things, like we crossed the Red Sea at Pi Hahiroth. He said, we camped at Rephidim where there was no water for the people to drink. We left Kadesh and camped at Mount Hor and at the border of Edom where there were at the foot of Mount Hor. Aaron the priest was directed by the Lord to go up on the mountain. There he died. So he goes through and he's telling them their history again and reminding them of the journey that they've gone through to get to where they're at. And this is where we'll end this week's study. Numbers 33 verse 52. We'll start at 50. So he's preparing them and he says, while they were camped near the Jordan River on the plains of Moab, opposite Jericho, the Lord said to Moses, give the following instructions to the people of Israel. When you cross the river Jordan into the land of Canaan, you must drive out all the people living there. Remember that. You must drive out all the people that are living there. You must destroy all their carved and molten images and demolish all their pagan shrines. Take possession of the land and settle in it, because I have given it to you to occupy. You must distribute the land among the clans by sacred lot and in proportion to their size. A larger portion of the land will be allotted to each of the larger clans, and a smaller portion will be allotted to each of the smaller clans. The decision of the sacred lot is final. In this way, the portions of the land will be divided among your ancestral tribes. But if you fail to drive out the people who live in the land, those who remain will be like splinters in your eyes and thorns in your sides. They will harass you in the land where you live, and I will do to you what I had planned to do to them. So remember this bit right here. Moses now, he's gone from being their leader. He's handed the leadership over to Joshua, and now he sits back as this sage and prepares the people for what they're about to do. And that's what we're going to read here this week, this next week, in the book of Deuteronomy. The book of Deuteronomy is going to be Moses retelling everything that we've read from Exodus 19 through Leviticus, through Numbers. He's going to summarize it in the book of Deuteronomy, and he's going to read it to the people from the mountain. And there at the end, he's going to give those books. He's going to give those books to Joshua. Joshua's going to fill in at the end of Deuteronomy what happened to Moses. And then Joshua then is going to put those books in the charge of the Levites. And those are going to be then handed down generation to generation, all the way through Jesus' time, all the way to present day, where we just read it just now. So we've just read, when we get to the end of Deuteronomy, we'll have read something that was handed down from way back when. And if you remember your genealogy in the first couple of videos, and we might go back over it, Methuselah lived long enough to see Adam. Then Methuselah lived long enough to see Noah, his grandson, and to see his great-grandsons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, before the flood. So the creation story is now passed down through all the way down to Moses. And then Moses has the clarity and he has the special revelation that God gives him to actually write these things down. Who better than to write down the Torah than Moses, who better to prepare the people of Israel to invade the land of Canaan than Moses? Moses was raised in Pharaoh's household. He was likely trained in warfare from a child. He obviously could read and write. He was the chosen person to write these things down. He wasn't a mere slave. He was brought up in Pharaoh's household. He knew how to conduct warfare. He knew how to write. Who better for God to choose than Moses to accomplish this task? And that explains, that's the big picture, the big idea of how we got to where we're at and why we have the book now, these books to read today. All because of Moses being selected to accomplish the task that he has. Just like the Israelites have been selected from all the peoples of the earth to accomplish the task that they have to do. Just like you and I are selected to accomplish whatever task it is that God has for us to do. So keep that in mind. Keep reading. We'll see you next week. We're going to finish up Numbers and we're going to read Deuteronomy. Have a good week.